What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan. Guys, I am getting ready to do my first live stream ever. It'll be on Thursday, just before the draft kicks off. I will be watching the draft on my iPad. It will be through Hulu, so I probably will be about 20 to 30 seconds behind on what's actually happening, but would love as many of you as possible to join me for that journey so that you can be commenting, we can watch it together, kind of just in general have a different kind of experience watching the draft. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I am at least going to stay through the Falcons pick, if not going on further, as I did find out that I do have Friday off this week, so I can actually stay up a little bit later than I usually would. But anyways, looking forward to getting started with that. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and do my mock draft for the 2023 NFL draft in Kansas City. I've gone ahead and started on PFF, and again, I apologize, I don't have a lot of graphics experience here, but in the first 7 picks, this actually is very similar to how I think it'll go. The first 7 picks on this draft went Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson, Anthony Richardson to the Colts, Jalen Carter to the Seahawks, Christian Gonzalez, corner, to the Lions, and Will Levis to the Raiders. That is very much how I think an ideal draft would go for the Falcons, which means that Tyree Wilson, the guy who's been drafted around that 8th spot overall, has been estimated to be the second edge rusher coming off the board, is still available. And I think there it makes sense for the Falcons to take him. So we'll take him and then we'll just see what the board does here. We're moving on to pick number 44. Now, at pick number 44, we did take an edge in the first round, but there are some things that the Falcons do need here. Looking at it, we certainly need a wide receiver, somebody like a wide receiver 2 to fill in there. We also need a left guard. Left guard gets a little spicy and a little difficult later on in the draft. Wide receiver, there's a lot of guys that could be there in the 3rd round. In this particular draft, there are a few guys that are still available that kind of stand out here. You've got Josh Downs, wide receiver from North Carolina, Steve Avila, the left guard or the guard out of Texas Christian, Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa, Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback out of Miami, and Nathaniel Dell, wide receiver out of Houston. Now, with that in mind, I actually think we're going to take a guard here because I've done enough mock drafts to realize that the guard pool falls off tremendously, and I think we would do well with a day 2 guy here. So let's go ahead and take Steve Avila, and let's see what we get at the 3rd round, pick 75 overall. Now, pick 75 overall, this is where I think we need to be looking at a receiver. And we've got 3 different guys that I have been looking at in particular. Only 2 of them, it looks like, have fallen here, but there is another one here that we can talk about as well. Now, Nathaniel Dell, in this scenario, has fallen all the way to the 3rd round. Nathaniel Dell is the Houston wide receiver. He is a very small guy, 5'8", only 165 pounds. He is dynamic as a slot receiver, but he is not a guy that's going to be going up well against big NFL corners. So I'm not as high on him for playing that wide receiver 2 role, certainly more of a slot guy, but we already have Kyle Pitts more often than not lining up in the slot, and then we have some other guys in there as well. Right now, Mac Hollins will be our wide receiver number 2, lining up on the far side, opposite of Drake London. So it's not a bad idea to take a small guy. The other one that is available right here in this particular draft is Marvin Mims, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma. A little bit taller, 5'11", 183 pounds. Fairly young guy, but he's done pretty well over his time in Oklahoma. His best year was 2020. He's had okay years since then. He's been targeted. He was targeted a lot more last year. He did have 6 touchdowns last year on 54 receptions. And then as far as targets go, he did have 87 targets. So about a 65-66% catch rate there on the targets. He lined up at wide receiver 288 times last year. He lined up at slot 126 times. So he can play both positions fairly well. And again, going back to Nathaniel Dell, he lined up 388 times in the slot and 190 times at wide receiver, so saw the field more often. but not really my favorite picks. The other guy that's available here is Michael Wilson out of Stanford. Michael Wilson, he's a little bit more prototypical. He was a redshirt senior, so he's a little bit older, 23 years old, 6'2", 213 pounds. I think he's got a better shot to be the wide receiver 2 for us. I don't know that we're picking him at the right spot, though, here. He played 148 snaps at wide receiver last year. He had 4 touchdowns, 27 receptions on 40 targets. Was really not all that impressive in all of his games. He only played 6 his senior year due to injury. But anyways, not somebody that I think would be a terrible pick here. And because I think we need a wide receiver 2, we're truly looking for that guy because I don't know that I trust Mac Hollins. And for the build that he has, I'm going to go with Michael Wilson. I think we could get away with Nathaniel Dell here. I think we could get away with Marvin Mims. Other guys that are notable here, if we didn't choose an edge and we didn't choose a guard in the past, if we wanted to go corner, there's Trevius Hodge-Tomlinson out of TCU. There's Nick Herbig, the edge out of Wisconsin. Darius Rush, corner, who played really well at the Senior Bowl, is still here out of South Carolina at corner. You have Corey Trice, who's a corner. Chandler Zavala is a guard for North Carolina State. And again, not somebody that's going to just light us up here, but again, if we're looking for depth, we could do that. Jordan Battle is also here out of Alabama for safety. So there are still several solid picks here, but just the way we've gone, I am going to take Michael Wilson. Now, this leaves us with 2 picks in the 4th round and 2 in the 7th. We're not doing any trades whatsoever. So, coming back into the 4th round, pick 110 overall. We now have filled some of our needs, being a guard, a wide receiver, and an edge, and we've done it in spots that make sense. So now I think we can swing a little bit more for the fences here on some guys that make a little bit more sense. Now, somebody that I absolutely loved when I watched him at Missouri is Isaiah McGuire at edge. I don't think we can have too many edge rushers. I think it would make sense to have him for depth here. There are some other guys here that we can go with as well, but we're going to be picking in 3 picks. But I just really like Isaiah McGuire. If he's here in the 4th round, I think it makes a lot of sense. He is a big guy that could be a solid starter for us. 6'4", 268 pounds. He really fits that scheme that they've been running in New Orleans with our new defensive coordinator as a big edge rusher. He's basically been running with guys that are about that 6'2" to 6'5" range and also are all over 260 pounds. So he meets that prototypical spot. I'm going to go ahead and take Isaiah. And now, coming back, I think we do need one more guy. I don't think it hurts to have more defensive interior guys. And again, these are now starting to look more like long shot guys. Guys that we don't really think will be the biggest impact, but have a chance to down the line. It's very difficult to hit well on 4th round and beyond in the draft. Again, GPS, the Grassi Perna Show, just did a show where they went back through the 32 NFL teams and their best drafts in the last 2 decades. And what was consistent about all of those is that when you were going through, you didn't hear solid names beyond the 3rd round. You heard teams that nailed the first 3 picks of the draft or nailed their first 3 rounds of the draft so they had multiple picks. And you had a few outliers that put them over the top in the 5th or the 4th round. Some of them had a 7th round standout. But again, I don't know that that's going to be the standard here. So I'm looking more for a defensive interior or a safety here. And again, we do have Jesse Bates. We have a couple of guys we have Richie Grant, who's still under contract. We have Jalen Hawkins, who's going into a contract year. So it's not the biggest need that we have. But defensive interior, we do have some older guys. Calais Campbell, again, 38 years old. You have Eddie Goldman coming out of retirement. We have Onyemata. We have Grady Jarrett. We have Taquan Graham, who got hurt last year. I don't think it hurts to have that, even if they sit on our practice squad for a little bit of time. I don't think it hurts. So the guys we're looking at here, we have Kobe Turner out of Wake Forest at defensive interior. He's a guy that I've consistently seen available in the 4th round on mocks, which doesn't mean anything, but again, he's consistently there. The other guy is Moro Ojomo, who is the defensive interior out of Texas. I apologize if I butchered his name. Had a breakout 2022 season. PFF graded him a 90.6. As far as his size, he is 6'3", 292 pounds. He played a ton of a ton of pressure snaps this past year. He is particularly good at the 3-4 at the defensive end position, so he could potentially be a guy that also fills that edge need for us. And then he does have some trouble with the pass rush move, so he may only be like a one-move guy, so somebody that may not be great there. And again, Kobe Turner here would be somebody that I'm kind of excited about. He has been consistent across the last 3 years of football. He is 6'3", 290 pounds, so more or less the same guy. A little bit older, though. He's going to be 24 at the start of the season. But again, a guy who's done well on pass rush snaps. He doesn't play a lot of run defense, but he's done pretty well overall. He had 3 sacks last year. He had 4 batted balls, 27 hurries, and 4 hits on the quarterback last year. I think, though, for our purposes, we're going to go with a guy who's got just a little bit more youth to him, and we're going to go with the Texas defensive tackle because he's only going to be 22 at the start of the season, and we might get a little more longevity out of him. Now, that will round us out for the first 4 rounds. I do look for the Falcons to try and pick into the 5th or the 6th round. Don't know what we're going to have to trade. It'll probably be 2024 picks, or maybe some players, or both of our picks in the final rounds. So now we are left with just guys that are flyers at this point. I don't have a lot of information on any of these guys, so one of the guys I'm going to look at, I know we could use another linebacker, so I'm going to go with Ventrell Miller out of Florida because I have had a chance to see him play. Not the worst player in the world, didn't play great against some really stiff competition, was awful against Georgia and LSU this past year, but again, he plays in the SEC, played great against Tennessee and great against Missouri, so a guy that could be boom or bust here and is probably going to sit on the bench for a while. So I'm going to take him for depth. And then we come back at, that was 224. We come back at 225 overall. And we have a pick here. And then we have pick 245 as well. Stetson Bennett is still available here. That's a heart pick for me just to have more quarterback depth. I don't think it makes sense to take him, though. I actually think he's going to go either drafted late to the Baltimore Ravens because the Georgia offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, just went to go be their offensive coordinator, and it makes sense that they would look to have Stetson as a backup to their current 2 quarterbacks, possibly somebody who sits on the practice squad for a while and could be called up when Lamar Jackson inevitably gets hurt or Tyler Huntley gets hurt because they both have a similar style. Stetson has good legs, but again, not somebody that I'm looking at here. So we're just going to take a kind of flyer here. Let's go with a safety. You've got a few here that make sense. I just picked a Florida guy, so I'm going to avoid Rashad Torrance right now. The other guys that are available in this particular draft would be DeMarco Helms out of Alabama, who has played pretty solidly for the Crimson Tide over the last few years, but is not obviously their star safety, with like Jordan Battle. And then you also have, I saw another guy on here that I wanted to talk about. Oh, Chamari Connor out of Virginia Tech. Similar PFF grades overall here. He's played the last few years. He is 6 foot tall. He's a redshirt senior. He's going to be 23 at the start of the season. And again, I would rather have a little bit of youth potentially here. Let me look and see how old Helms is. He is, they're both similar. I'm just going to go with Helms because I trust Alabama players more than I trust Virginia Tech players. And finally, at pick 245, this is the flyer of all flyers. Let's just look and see what we've got here. Let's just go with a center because I know we need that. Let's go with Brett Nealon out of USC, who played remarkably this last year with the Trojans, but didn't have the best seasons prior to that. So we'll take him, and he'll probably end up being a guy that gets cut, but we'll try that. So what this has me doing, PFF is grading me out as we speak. They grade me out at a B overall. They're calling Tyree Wilson a D+ overall here because they have moved him from the number 6 to the number 28 overall, but he's still being drafted much higher than that. They don't particularly like this Steve Avila pick. They don't like the Michael Wilson pick. They love Isaiah McGuire. They love Moro Ojomo. They love Ventrell Miller. They love DeMarco Helms, and they're okay with Brett Nealon. But, guys, that's just what I'm going to go with. I think that's a fairly realistic draft for the Falcons at this point. It certainly fills a lot of needs for us, and it's something that we could see happen on draft night. We're going to know very, very soon, though, how it actually goes. Again, I will be doing a live stream on the night of the draft, at least for the first round. We'll not do it the second and the third round. Just don't have time for that. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for indulging me with this. Consider liking and subscribing to my content. I really would appreciate it. It'll help my channel grow. And as always, guys, rise up.